Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Learn Counseling Podcast. I'm Kiera Brown, a licensed professional counselor, EMDR trained therapist, and certified hypnotherapist, and I'm your host. Here on the podcast, we explore mental health, relationships, trauma, healing, the deeper emotional relational patterns that shape how we connect with ourselves and with others. Our goal is to bring you grounded, real conversations with clinicians and experts who do this work in meaningful human ways. Today, I'm really excited to introduce our guest, Dr. Cheri Timko. Dr. Timko is a couples sex therapist and relationship coach with over 25 years of experience helping couples navigate the ups and downs of love and long term partnership. She focuses on practical, real world solutions, drawing from her training in Gottman couples therapy, neurodiverse couples therapy, and sex therapy to help partners work through challenges and build relationships that feel genuinely fulfilling for both people. In addition to her clinical work, she also creates blogs, workbooks, and courses designed to help couples feel closer and communicate more effectively and reconnect emotionally and physically. So, ready to let's dive on in. Cheri, welcome. I'm so glad to have you today. You're my first sex therapist on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
I'm so glad to talk to you today.
I'm super pumped. So, what brought you into the therapy field?
I was very young and I started working, I was 19 working at a shelter for homeless and runaway teenagers. And so I was barely older than they were and had to get them to listen to me and follow instructions and all of that. Working with teenagers was fascinating. I loved working with them. They were so much fun. But a lot of the work was focused on helping them see where they had some power in their life, some control, and getting them to be patient. After that, I started doing family work, and that felt more effective because I could bring the parents into things and advocate for the kids and get them all on the same page. But the real aha moment I had was when I started doing couples work. And I realized that I could change things for the kids without the kid even in the room. And if I could get the parents on the same page working together, then there's this trickle out effect that impacts the kids, impacts the parents too, impacts their work, it impacts their community. Like just helping couples get along just makes everything better.
Yeah, that's amazing. And like it's totally true. Once you work with the system, everything kind of trickles out and it like works, does it better for everyone. Yeah. So it's very kind of the journey that's like going from like working in the shelter and then getting your doctorate. So what was that like experience like for you? Was like living life and doing all that schooling? That's a lot.
I expected when I was in my bachelor's degree that I was going to get my doctorate. And I really thought that I was going to go from getting my bachelor's into a doctorate, that by 30, I would have all my schooling done. And of course, that is not how that happened. Instead, I couldn't get into the PhD programs I wanted to. So I went and got my master's and then got licensed and then I just couldn't justify doing my doctorate for many years. It wouldn't increase my pay, wouldn't make me a better clinician necessarily. It just wasn't going to add much. And then a couple of years ago, I found a program that I could get my doctorate in 2 years. And it would allow me to work on a doctoral project that I wanted to work on, and then I'd have something to sell at the end. And so I was like, I can give up 2 years and like really focus in. And so that's what I did.
That's really cool because I kind of a similar thing. I wanted to go like straight from undergrad to doctor because you get your master's while you're getting your doctorate. So why get your master's and then do it again? And that's like my thinking, why waste time? And I just have a master's currently on it. Right now, I'm like, it's not worth it for me getting my PhD, but that makes sense. Like, you have 2 years. So what was this magic program that you just, you're not talking 2 years?
Yeah, I got a master's in clinical sexology. I was very pleased with the program that I went to. The drawback is it's not licensable at the PhD level. And so I have just a tiny bit of regret but there are no programs that you can go into where you can take the things that you've already done and apply it and get the PhD in something that's licensable. Yeah. On balance, the price was right. It was a good program. It was learning exactly what I needed to learn for my couples. And it got me this degree that I've been wanting for 30 years.
Really cool. I didn't even know that they had like a master's program in psychology. I thought it was just like little, I just like with health, and then you had to go after and get certified in sex therapy. So, where'd you go to
Well,
school at?
I went to Modern Sex Therapy Institute. It's in Florida, and you can do the whole program online. There are some in person programs. There are some, I don't even know the ins and outs because there reaches a point where it's like, it's not worth the money, it's not worth the time. And so it was just when I found there's a couple of these programs out there, and I was like, this I could still do. So that's how I ended up there.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you were in like your doctoral bachelor's program and then your master's program, is it always you knew like from 19, like you had like couples was like your direction?
No, I didn't realize that until I had been in the field for a while. I even now still enjoy working with teenagers. I don't do much teen work because as my kids hit certain ages, it was really hard for me to work with them in therapy. And so I've aged out of the younger ages, but I still find teenagers fascinating, so much fun to work with. They're so real with you. But there came a point about, oh, I don't know. I was probably 10 years into my field, and I had the dawning realization around couples and not needing kids in the room. But I also moved to an area of the country that had almost no couples therapists. So I recognized that there was space for me to really dig in and excel in an area that I was passionate and excited about. And so I made the decision that I was going to be the couples therapist of the region and then really worked hard to become that.
It's like a huge list. Like how did that process feel for you, like emotionally, and just like managing all of that?
It was good that it was something that I was passionate about
Yeah.
because it's one thing to identify a hole in the market. It's a whole different thing to identify a hole and you're not really that excited about. Couples work is fascinating and always challenging. I walk out of session a couple times a week and I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Am I really capable of helping? And of course, I pull on other cases that were similar, but there really aren't couples that are cookie cutter. It's really
Yeah.
about helping couples find what really works for the two of them. So it's always engaging. It's always challenging. I'm very frequently reading things or watching things or taking new trainings because there's always something new for me to learn.
Yeah. That's so true. Like plus in our field, we have to constantly be learning the stupid elections.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So you said you mentioned that your kids were getting older, like you kind of grew out of the kids, which I totally understand that because kids are a lot. How many kids do you have?
I have three daughters. They are 19, 22, and 23. And so they're like really squished together in age. And I homeschooled in addition while running my practice. So it was intensive parenting at the same time as doing therapy work, which is part of why my kids hit a certain age, it just was hard for me to be as present with them if I was spending the day with kids their age.
Makes a lot of sense. I see, I thought about doing homeschooling with my two kids too when I get to that part. I'm like, how am I going to work and see them? I was like, how do you manage that? Not even just like emotionally, but like, just logistically. Yeah, that's like,
I always saw myself more as a parent coordinator than an actual teacher. We had to think of homeschooling like the parents just like sitting there, like teaching them each thing. And I was much more like looking for the best curriculum, the one that fit them with where they were and what they needed to learn, and then making sure that they were on track and then helping them when they would get stuck. That worked well for me, worked well for my kids and my family. We live in a place where I there weren't the school options that I wish that there were. So this ended up being the best option for us.
Yeah. Did your husband ever or partner ever come in and help with it? Or is it mainly like you lifting, doing the heavy lifting?
Usually there's one parent who does the heavy lifting. Maybe maybe there are couples who balance it better, but I've seen that most of the time there's one parent who's much more the coordinator and the everyday sort of work. My husband did have a course or two every year that he was more responsible for, but in the end, you need somebody who's tracking and pacing and putting all the pieces together. So that often does fall on one parent.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So were you like working full time while you're doing that too?
This is a tricky thing because in private practice, how many sessions is considered full time?
That's
And
fair.
one of the things that I've started to shift in my thinking is I've always tended to talk about sessions, but not about clients. So I had a very busy week right before Christmas and I had 20 sessions, which is a lot for me, but I actually saw 35 people. And so because I work with couples, I've always just said I had so many sessions a week and didn't think about how that really impacts me to see that many clients. So my goal is to see 10 to 12 at this point sessions a week. That's still 20 to 25 people.
Yeah, that's a lot to lift. Like I had two couples on my caseload, but like one dropped off. So I only have one couple right now. And even to see that one couple at that hour is so much work for me than like seeing like my other one's one on one. To see 20 in a week, how do you manage like your own emotional overload with seeing all those
Yeah,
people?
that was an extraordinary week. My goal at this point is to see 10 to 12 sessions a week.
Yeah.
That week, I did nothing else except see clients, do paperwork, make sure all my phone calls and emails are answered because I really don't have the capacity to see that many people. Some weeks are, this is what private practice is. You have ebbs and flows. And in order to take time off for the holidays, you end up squishing everybody together so that you have that break. And it was that an ebb or a flow? I guess that's a flow.
Yeah. That was not the whole of those. So even like on your like your lighter weeks, because even seeing 10, having 10 sessions, that's still at least 20 people, unless you're having a poly couple that you're, and you have those other people coming in, like that could even make it even more complex and more people. So what do you do
Yeah,
for self-care?
I usually have a couple of sessions that are individual. So it is never double the number. If I see 10 sessions, it's almost never 20 people. For self care, I love to read and I love to garden and I love to cook. And then I do a lot of writing. And while I do a lot of writing around couples, it's still a much more creative activity, and so that also is part of my self-care.
What type of, so are you writing a book currently? Is that what you're working on now? Or do you like,
Uh, yeah, I've been working on workbooks. While I really do want to write a book, I wrote my doctoral project in a workbook form and found that I really love it because I can put a lot of psychoeducation in there and then specific activities for a couple to do to deal with an issue. So my doctoral project was on a sex therapy workbook for neurodiverse couples. And then I've done three more workbooks. So I'm actually published on Amazon with them, which just feels really cool to say. I have another one that's in the editing process, and then I have probably 10 more that are drafted somewhere between idea and some of the content, and eventually hope to have just a whole bunch of workbooks that are targeted towards a topic that can help couples move from one place to the next.
Amazing. That's just that I've had my I would I work on I have my own journals that I create, but I have not dived into the whole workbook itself because I feel like that's oh, that's a big lift. But
The first one, getting it on, like if I hadn't done it for my doctoral project and had all those deadlines and wanted it to meet that certain standard, it would have been really hard for me to do. But now looking back, I wish I had realized how easy it would be once I got past the first one. It's self-published, so I didn't use, I was able to just decide when it was done and put it up. And I have seen some sales of it. It's not extraordinary, but I've sold about 150 workbooks at this point in the last year and a couple of months. And so that felt like a real win for me.
I just yeah. Do your CDs with your clients personally too? Do they have like instant feedback from you?
Most of the most of the content I developed in working with couples. And
Okay.
then the worksheets I developed from activities that I've used with couples and then made adjustments for it to be something that they can do on their own. I've given a couple of workbooks to clients to then give me feedback on, but it's more from therapy into workbook than it is the other direction.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because obviously your lived experience will drive what you create. So you think it's been like the biggest thing that you noticed with like even like neurodiverse couples or even like the non-typical couples? Is there any big differences that you've seen?
I think this is a little bit controversial, and I'll tell you anyways. I realized that while I was doing all the research for my doctoral project and writing up the workbook, I realized that I had never worked with a couple who was not neurodiverse. Now, I don't mean that they have a diagnosis. What I mean is that their brains function fundamentally differently from one another. They think about the world differently, they experience the world differently. One might think at a really fast pace, and the other one thinks at a more measured, methodical, need time to process pace. They might walk into a room and pick up different levels of information. Not uncommon that a couple will walk into the same room. One partner will notice 5 pieces of information and the other notices 30. And then they have to live in the same space when they think so differently from one another. And so the jump from neurotypical to neurodiverse was much smaller for me because I had always been helping couples bridge differences between the two of them, but it helped me think about those differences differently. Like there's nothing wrong with either partner. They just experience the world vastly differently than their partner does. And that's even in neurotypical relationships.
Really interesting. It reminds me of as what I read it mostly as different people too. And I've always said the reason why him and I work is because he has what I don't have, and I have what he doesn't have, and that's how we fit like those same puzzle pieces. Like we're not like the exact same. Also, if I was dating someone like me, I'd go insane. Start to look like me. But it makes sense, like why like someone would enter your room, experience it in different ways because like we are literally different people. Even then, like not just not being neurodivergent, neurotypical, like even just like male and female, the cultural expectations on both genders is so vastly different.
Yeah, and as long as couples stay in that space where they see that difference as a strength, they see that difference as something that makes their life richer, where they can see and understand the world better because of that different perspective, they tend to do fairly well because they can adapt to each other and accommodate each other and understand that this isn't their partner isn't trying to undermine them or derail them. It's when that shift happens and they start to see that difference as, I don't know, making their life harder. that couples can often get into a lot of trouble.
Yeah. So what's like your biggest tip that you give them to like people that had a hard time with that shift?
Yeah, the trick is to stay in a mindset where you understand that you're both just bringing different pieces of the puzzle to the table, and that you're looking for the solutions that actually bridge those differences. Now, the trouble is that most couples don't stick with problems long enough to find a solution that will bridge these very differences, these very big differences. And so they end up in a situation where one wins sometimes, the other wins the rest of the other times, or even worse, they take half of one person's solution and half of the other person's solution, and they put it together, and neither one of them are happy with it. And really good relationships don't do either of those things. They find creative solutions that actually work for both partners. So they both walk away from the table feeling happy with the solution.
Yeah, so like from what I'm getting, a compromise in your opinion isn't even like the best solution because everyone's leaving not happy.
Yeah. I always say compromise sucks. It's bad for relationships. What couples need is collaboration or synergy. That's where they put their different personalities and their different needs together, and they find solutions that really truly work for both of them.
So just every thing. So what would you say if a couple had like severe money problems and like one partner is we need to save, we need to X, Y, and Z. It was like we need to like make a big change, sell the house and move and do all these crazy things. Like what do you kind of help navigate them with that type of situation?
So the first thing would be to recognize that both partners are bringing something really important to that discussion. The partner who wants to save money because that gives them security and they see a future there, and they have these goals so that the couple has less stress in other ways. The other partner is usually bringing something that is very important too, and that's often easy to miss. They're often bringing the joy of living in the present or celebrating things or bringing fun to the relationship. And so, what they're asking for that is different than savings is really important too. So, starting there, but then also, okay, what are the options? What's the problem? What are the options? And then looking for options beyond your pet or favorite solution. That's what often happens. Couples come to the table and they're like, I've thought about this. Here's what I'd like us to do. And their partner's like, I've thought about this and here's what I think we should do. And then they argue over that possibility. And one of the tricks is to say, okay, so imagine that you can't do either one of those. What would you do instead? That's where they often get to a creative, much better solution than just arguing over which way is the best way to do it.
Because like you're basically telling them like to get out of their own way and say these A and B are not options anymore. Find option C and like what is that together? Because like you said like the I thought and then you came together. It's not like them actually coming together. It's like just one trying to lead together. Yeah, that's it's really interesting. I think I might steal that from you.
It's really effective, especially when couples are stubborn or they dig in their heels and they're like, look, I'm right. And the reality is, your partner probably is right too. If you were making that decision on your own, if they were making that decision on their own, that would probably be a great solution. It would probably solve things, but it is not the right solution for you as a couple. That's different.
Yeah, then it definitely is really different too. Because individually, if you're just thinking as an individual, that would be the right thing. But if you're trying to work together and grow and move as a couple, it can't just be an I thing. It has to be a we thing.
And of course, I say this and it sounds There's nothing brilliant about this. This sounds logical. This sounds reasonable. But then you hit a problem with your spouse and you're like, but I'm right. This is the right way to do it. And that's where couples really get off track.
Because no one wants to be wrong. They want to have what they want. So they dig in their heels.
Yeah. I wonder how frustrating it is for my couples when I'm like, you're both right. You are both right.
If you say you're both right.
Yeah, I would like to think it feels really good for them. I'll bet that's not how they experience it.
Yeah, I'm thinking like I saw my couples too. Like I can see both sides. And like they will give me a look like but I can. Like both sides make sense. So let's find a way to bring them together. And they don't always like that.
But it's fascinating work
Yeah.
because every couple is going to find their own solution. They're going to find the ways of connecting that make the most sense for them. And what's different? Even if you took those two people and put them in different relationships, they probably would come up with different solutions when you let go of, here's how I would do it if I were an individual.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you work strictly with just like the traditional like couple, like two people, or do you ever do like couples or like the whole Emory community?
I have done work with LGBTQ couples, and they have sometimes been in open relationships. To date, I haven't done a 3 or a 4 couple session. I absolutely would. I don't know how I would do that different. I don't love family work. It would be different than that, but it also would be as complex as that. And so when you imagine having 2 adults in the room and the energy that takes, and then you bring 3 people in the room, and then you bring 4 people, and they're all adults, so they all have equal autonomy, then those just get more complicated and more energy.
Yeah, that was definitely would feel like a bigger lift to do that too. Yeah. So your couples you have like open marriages. Do you do anything differently than the people with closed marriages?
Not typically, not in what I do, because my job is to help them communicate. It's to help them understand each other. It's to help them feel connected and to structure their lives together so that they both feel like they have the best life together. So from that standpoint, no, I don't really do anything different when it's open. They just have a different set of agreements between the two of them that than a typical heterosexual closed relationship would have.
I've experienced with the open marriages as well, and it's definitely different too. Because like sometimes, depending on what phase of the open relationship it is, one partner might not have an external partner, one might have one, and balancing those needs and having those negotiations is definitely a different lift.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're having different conversation. But one of the things that I love about open relationships is when couples do them well, they communicate at a whole different level than a closed heterosexual relationship. In fact, I think that sometimes heterosexual closed relationships can be a little lazy in their communication skills. And in an open relationship, you really have to be very clear about what you mean, and you have to be willing to listen, and you need to adjust as circumstances change. And that's a fun dynamic too.
See, too, 'cause if you're in an open relationship, like everyone has to be on the same page. Like everyone has to agree. If one person's not agreeing, especially like when the original like nuclear center of the relationship, if one person's like, I don't really want this anymore, that person goes off and so does it. Then it's no longer an open relationship. And that probably brings a whole other dynamic too.
But you certainly can have betrayal in an open relationship. And that decision about opening or closing, they do have to be on the same page, but there's a lot of degrees of open. It isn't like open or closed. And even closed relationships have to understand the boundaries with other relationships, even if it's not romantic, it's still your partner and them being vulnerable with a friend or close with someone else and how much they can share with that other person without it threatening the relationship. So, to some degree, that question of openness is much more of a spectrum that affects all couples.
So I actually hadn't thought about it like that. It's like in my head, I'm thinking I probably should have thought about it a little bit more. But friends are friends. You just talk to your friends, and then but also, yeah, sometimes like lines can get blurred, especially if you're divulging something like really big happening in your marriage, and your partner didn't want that to be divulged. It can cause other issues.
Yeah, and family as well. Some people
Mhm.
are very close with their family and would share a lot. And unless their partner is comfortable with that and they're on the same page about that boundary, you can end up with some similar sort of challenges.
Yeah. And so I kind of bring up the couple that I work with, like they have like similar things, like where one partner doesn't want things to be shared outside the, like the marriage, and the other one does because they're very talkative. It's like, but if the other partner doesn't want it talked about, they don't want it talked about, and you have to respect that boundary.
It has to be an agreeable boundary for both partners. Otherwise, it's an ultimatum. And ultimatums don't work really well in relationships. It's much better if they get to an agreement that they're both happy with. So that might, you might have to be creative around where there's room to divulge information and where there's not, or what kinds of information can be divulged and what cannot. But that's still a negotiation of figuring out where that boundary goes, not one person deciding and the other going along with that.
Really interesting. So, like with all the work that you've done with like your own couples, has it ever led into issues with like your own personal measure or any relationships personally for yourself?
It so I am in a very good relationship with my husband. We're hitting 25 years this year. So that is
Congratulations.
really, thank you, really great. And 25 years means that we have been through some stuff. So, yes, absolutely. I, especially earlier in my career, there were times when I would look at my couples who had been through a crisis and remade their relationship and ended up just in a fundamentally different place than they had ever been. And I have had a little bit of jealousy at those times. And I didn't want a crisis that would cause that kind of transformation, but to see them really connect at a deep level and have something that just feels so precious because they had done the work to get there. There have been times when I was like, huh, could I, could we just have some sort of transformation too? And those just come slower when you don't have a crisis that gets you there.
Different like parts like yeah, as you said, like sometimes it does take the crisis, other times it just takes like the slow involvement of like us as people. Yeah. And yeah. So were you, if you don't mind me asking, were you guys like how long were you guys dating before you guys got married?
We dated for about 2.5 years before we got married. And I was in the mental health field, but I was not yet a couples therapist when we were dating. I didn't start that until our first child was born. And then it took a while before I really specialized in couples. And then it really was about 15 years ago that I said, this is my specialty. This is what I want to be known for. This is what I do. And so there's been a lot of evolving in my career at the same time as development in my own relationship.
Yeah. And that's definitely interesting as you evolve as a professional, like seeing, oh, this is like where I really want to be, this is what I really like in the field. And then like also you said that like you're a mom, you're a wife, like you're your own person too. So balancing all of those things that kind of like can be really challenging. That what'd you do? What have you done to stay true to yourself? With, like all these changes that you've been through.
True to myself. Uh, this is a hard question because I'm a woman. There's a lot of pressure on women. I was very busy for the last 25 years. And so I think that as my youngest graduated from high school, there's been room to look back and reflect and figure out what did I do well and what could I have done better? Where should I have stood up for myself more and where should I have been more flexible? And I think that one of the ways that I stayed true to myself was in continuing to work. In a lot of ways, my life would have been so much easier if I had put my career on the back burner. But that was the space where I got to feel confident, where I could get a little bit of professional prestige, where I could develop myself in a way that didn't have the constraints around me that being a mom did or being a wife did. So that's probably the biggest thing that worked well for me in balancing those.
Really good. Because I feel like your husband probably like wanted you to just stay at home and take care of the kids and not work, so you could devote all your time and energy to them. But also, yeah, just thought of I know a lot of people that they become stay-at-home moms or stay-at-home parent, like mom or dad, they end up losing themselves in the kids, and they don't know who am I anymore because they lose time for friends, hobbies, things. The bus gets subsumed with the children and taking care of the house, which can be
Yeah,
a lot.
logistically, it would have been better for me if I had stayed home. I had so many things, so many different pieces of our puzzles of our lives. But I don't think I would have been the best mom that I could have been if I had stayed at home. I think I needed to work. And I think it was good that my husband could see that I was a better person because I worked and had creative and challenging work, not just for me. It couldn't have been just show up somewhere and put in the hours. It needed to be something that really challenged my brain and got me to think about things differently.
Just really cool. I'm glad he was like that supportive and understood like you weren't going to stay at home and just let him be the breadwinner. Like you were both going to contribute to the household.
Yeah. There was a pivotal moment when our second daughter had colic and she was just miserable. She did not sleep longer than 2 hours until she was 8 months old. And yeah, it was pretty brutal. Very sweet child, but she was going through something. And that was a lot of stress for us. And at some point, I was just not coping. Like it was just too much for me. And so we sat down and talked about it. And he did not once suggest that the solution was that I should quit my private practice. And that was one of those moments where it was him knowing that I was better by getting out of the house and being my own person for a few hours a week. And so we found another solution. This is where being creative can be really helpful to solve the problem in that situation. For a year, he used his sick time and vacation time so that every other week he had a day off, which then gave me time to not always be on with the kids. And for us, that felt like not just a win, but so creative and fit us so well that it almost starts to feel like you're in this like special little world that's specially developed for the two of you when you find those really unique solutions that may not work for anyone else, but are the ones that make your life work well and you be happy in it.
They're amazing. That's it. Like I said, like the creative solutions definitely leads to these big moments, like knowing like your partner sees you and supports you and like actually wants you to succeed. And like vice versa for like you for him. I think that is really cool that you have that support and
So when couples find that kind of solution, it gives me goosebumps. Like I will feel it on the back of my neck where I'm like, oh, they just hit like something that is so specific to the two of them and meets their needs so uniquely and completely. And I'm like, okay, that's what I want you to do in every part of your life is find what makes that so amazing that you would not jeopardize it and you would fight for it and you would see it as like that epic true love because you've found those solutions that just make your life really good.
Right, I mean, that's so cool. Do your couples, like, notice, like, those, like, aha golden moments whenever they're happening, or does, like, you say, you just did it?"
I hope they do. I certainly am. I have this energy with couples where I'm like, "Oh, that's it." Like, I can just, it may not be perfect yet, but like, this is outside of that struggle that you were in. We just broke that gridlock that you were in. And now you can think about that problem differently. And so I do call it out when I see it because it's just delicious.
Yeah, it's just I've been, like, I'm just getting happy as I'm thinking about this, like, just imagine, like, your couple's, like, having that moment, and I just, like, that's just yeah, I can feel, like, that amazing, "Oh, yay."
Okay, so that's why I get really excited about this work. That's how I know that I'm in the right space. Because when I see that and experience that, I don't know, it's that contagious excitement about something that it really, couples can get so entrenched and so negative with each other. And when I get them out of that space and into this space, they know that they are in a space that is just completely different than what they have been in before.
Wow, that's amazing. Like I said, I got chills myself just thinking about it. It's things like of such, like, deep healing work. I get that way whenever, like, my individuals, like, we talked about X, Y, and Z, and I went and did it, and this happened. I'm like, "Oh my god, yes." Like, you actually, like, experience, like, something for yourself, then you have to have the boundary that you've always wanted. I'm like, just, like, I'm always the biggest cheerleader in those moments.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what makes this, it's what makes us really good at this work is that we recognize how, like, that we recognize that moment and we're working with clients to get them to that moment. And that is not formulaic. That is very individual. It is a journey that we go on a client with, and we can't anticipate or guess what that's going to be because it's always here we are. What's that next step? Here we are. What's that next step? Until we get to that place where they start having those experiences. Yeah. If you watch couples therapy on any show, it is miserable. It's tearing each other apart. It's throwing each other under the butt. Like couple therapy in any sort of entertainment is nothing like what I think couple therapy should be. Because if I want to get couples to that point where they're creative and open with each other, that isn't by tearing each other apart.
Right.
And so what people expect when they come to work with me is often very different than the reality of it.
Yeah, I almost any therapy in any show is, like, not what happens in the real therapy office, and I was like, it drives me insane seeing that. I'm like, "This is not how it happens." Because someone, like, talk to the screenwriter and be like, "This is actually what happens in a therapy office." Have it be legitimate, but, of course, they will lose entertainment value then.
And if people are experiencing therapy the way that they see it on TV, I would just encourage them to see that as a red flag. That is not the best kind of therapy that you could be having. Maybe it's not the right modality, maybe it's not the right personality from the therapist. Therapy can be really hard work, but it shouldn't be excruciating. It shouldn't tear you apart and make you worse functioning, especially over time. Nope.
Yeah. You know, like, it is, like, supposed to be, like, deep soul healing work where you get to, like, your core wounds and you heal those core wounds, and it's hard, and it's hard work doing that, but, like, the goal is, like, as you heal each wound, you feel better and better to get to the highest level of yourself, not the other way around. And yeah, if anyone has any of that going on, they definitely need to get out because it's horrible for them. And I hope to God that with the regulations that we have in place, that those therapists are, like, called out a lot more frequently. And if that doesn't
Yeah.
happen,
And it may be that it's when you have a poor fit between therapist and client, you're much more likely to have those kind of dynamics. And that could be therapist personality, that could be modality, that could be their own, where they are in their own life, or that can be what the client needs and how much work they've done before then, or what their goals are. But when you have that poor fit, that's where you see a lot of these situations that just are not as therapeutic as they could be.
Yeah, that's true too. Like finding the perfect fit is important. It's part of like why I started this podcast. Like everyone can like people can get an idea of like who therapists are to begin with. And mostly all of us have these consultation calls, or if we don't, we should, to feel see if like we're really the right fit with someone and we can really help them and like we're gonna get them what they need. But even like just knowing how someone works for someone and like just them like people seeing your energy and like your happiness, like when a couples find like that aha moment, I hope to God like a couple's seeing you like, yeah, I want to work with her. Just she will get it. And she'll know she can know how to help us get us to where we want to be.
Yeah. And a therapist can do that in a bunch of different ways. You mentioned consultations, and I'm a big fan of consultations too, but I know a lot of colleagues who don't do them but are still very successful at finding a good fit. I think conversations like ours are also really helpful for potential clients to pick someone who's going to be a really good fit. Reading a therapist's blogs, when their website really describes what the work is that they're doing and how they do it. I think that all of those are ways that someone can figure out if someone's going to be a good fit before they go and pour everything out and then realize that maybe they're not going to get exactly what they need.
Yeah, that's right. Because a good website too, definitely hits all the key points, like what you do, how you do it, like what the people you usually see, and usually very supposed to be very clear with what to expect and like how everything works out. So if that's not happening, then obviously things need to be looked at. But this has been amazing. So I'd like to wrap up with asking you where you'd like people to find you if everything you said resonated with them and like what little tidbits do you want to leave them with?
Yeah, I connect with most people through my therapy website. It's couplescounselingcenter.online. And I work with a neurodiverse population. And so my website has lots of details about what working with me is like. I also have a Facebook group where long term couples who want support, advice, encouragement can join. And that's called Date Night Community.
Well, so I really that's an awesome community like to great. That's so awesome.
Thank you so much for talking with me today. Thank you for inviting me on to talk to you and your guests.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. I will have everything that Cheri listed on the description that you guys can all look on her links and look at her workbook on Amazon and all the fun things that she has out there. If you have any questions, you want to reach out to her directly on her website. If you have questions for me, you want to reach out to me directly, go to my website as well. But it's been great having you, Cheri. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.